green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place. Ready? This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go. Let's go. Go. And a good football Monday, a meeting Monday here on Birds 365. We appreciate you meeting with us, Mac and Mac, John McMullen and Jody McDonald, as the 32 owners meet out in Arizona this week. Another off-season week with moves and signings and build up to the NFL draft. We'll try and keep you informed over the next couple hours with a couple good guests coming your way. Johnny Mac, when you and I wrapped it up on Friday, we thought there was a possibility Eagles would make a signing over the weekend. They did. Terrell Edmunds, solid starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers over the last 5 years, has played a lot of games and has been part of some pretty good defenses in Pittsburgh. Comes here on a relatively inexpensive. Are you almost getting tired of saying that? Relatively inexpensive? That's what Harry Roseman is doing these days, signing for the Eagles as a potential starting safety. What was the first thing that popped in your mind when you realized Terrell Edmunds now a Philadelphia Eagle?
My first thing was, what the heck is going on with Terrell Edmunds? And yeah, I'd like to crowdsource this because, I mean, this is, as you mentioned, this is a pretty good player. He's still young. Was a first-round pick, so he's got the pedigree. Now, he wasn't supposed to be. He was kind of a reach that year, but people forget that tends to drop off into the ether. Has started, has been durable on very good defenses, and he can't make any money. You said relatively inexpensive. I'm going to take up relatively. So when you talk about Rashad Penny,
let me explain my relatively then, if you've got an issue with it. The other Eagle defensive signings this offseason have basically been for the veteran minimum. He is above and beyond that, almost double that if the reports are accurate, that it's $2 million, mostly guaranteed incentives for a little bit more. So in comparison to the other Philadelphia Eagles signings this offseason, that's where I come up with relatively inexpensive.
Well, what I was about to say is, I get the contracts for Rashad Penny and Greedy Williams and Justin Evans and Nicholas Morrow. I get those contracts. I mean, that was expected for those players. With this particular player, I don't know. I don't know from two angles, Jody. I don't get why he's so cheap, and I don't get why he's here because he is a traditional box strong safety. That's all he does. That's what he does. He can't play cover two. He can't play center field. And, on one hand, I think this could be a positive when we talk about Sean Desai moving forward, because by definition, if you are playing a free safety and a strong safety, you are not playing the same defense that they played over the 2 years of Nick Sirianni with Jonathan Gannon, the Vic Fangio defense, blah, blah, blah. You are not playing that defense. The whole point of that defense is to play the safeties back to disguise everything from a coverage standpoint till post snap. And if you're putting a free safety and a strong safety on the field, you're alerting the quarterback pre-snap a lot of information. Now that could be good. That could be good from my aspect because I want to get the heck away from this scheme. So if that shows some open-mindedness on the Eagles' part about shifting away, I think that's a positive. Or it could be just, hey, we're at where we're at, and this is the best player available, and you got to utilize it until you get somebody else who can play what we want to play. It could be one of the two. I don't know which one. More likely the latter. But yeah, I can't figure why this guy isn't making any money. And there's got to be something. And he's a good guy. Already met him virtually, but already met him. No ego whatsoever. We talked about the previous safety. I mean, just no ego. Very well grounded, very polite, very I don't get it. I don't get it at all. Why this guy at 26 years old, this is the people who get paid in free agency. And so that scares me a little bit, to be blunt. Like, why are 31 other teams, a lot of them better fits for his particular skill set? Why aren't they willing? That part concerns me a little bit. I have to admit that.
Question: better fits on other teams, I get that, but of those teams that you would say their overall defensive scheme and his abilities seem to be a better fit, how many of them actually have a need for a safety? The Eagles lost
I'd have
both
to
of their
break it down
safeties this year. Yeah, that's I think the point you got to take into consideration. The Eagles were the only team in the NFL that lost, quote unquote, both of its starting safeties via free agency. So they have a need, a hole to fill, even though there are other teams that may play a defensive system that seems to fit Terrell Edmunds a little bit better. They might not have what they perceive as a need for safety because they've got both of their safeties in place. Some of them, I would guess, could upgrade with a signing of a guy like Edmunds, believe it or not, at only $2 million. So maybe they should have, but they might be good enough and say, all right, we're not adding to that position because we're already good at that position.
Well, hey, not that PFF again is the be all end all, but they graded him at number 36. So let's do the math. There's 64 starting safeties. So if you're 36, you're a high level number 2 in this league. You're one of the best so-called safety twos in this league.
Right.
Now they had Minka Fitzpatrick, who's one of the best safeties overall in football. There's a lot of context that goes into it. Maybe playing Minka Fitzpatrick, who is a true star, who might be the best safety in football. He's in the conversation at least. Mm-hmm. Maybe that helped him. Maybe that elevated him a little bit. Maybe he's really not that good, but that's a hell of a lot better than C.J. Gardner-Johnson was graded. It's a hell of a lot better than Marcus Epps was graded. This one I don't understand, and I've been mulling it for a while. I do not understand because, again, he's durable. He's got tremendous starting experience. And not only just starting experience on generally a pretty good defense, sometimes really good. Yeah, I mean, this to me on paper at least is a tremendous value pick, but I am a little bit, but I got a little bit of concern because contracts tell you a lot. They do. Now, NFL teams don't always get it right.
Right.
But they tell you a lot, and they tell you what they think about. Same thing I said about CJ. It tells you a lot. It's not just the Eagles. It's 31 other teams. So that's what and I texted a few people, and I did, my one Eagles guy said the same thing I did because he's the one who gives me all the information about the scheme and all the philosophy. And he's like, yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. Not a fit. There's two angles I haven't completely figured out, to be honest.
Here's the reason why I like the signing, and you sort of touched on it, and I'll go even further. Um, Even though you're looking at two Jonathan Gannon fans right here, J Mac and I are both are on record as saying that we thought Jonathan Gannon did a heck of a job over the 2 years here before he upped and left for Arizona. One of my knocks on Jonathan Gannon was, and will continue to be, I don't think it will be as easily seen or detected now that he's a head coach, but don't kid yourself, you'll see some of it, is that he was pretty damn rigid. That his theme, his scheme, his way of doing things was the way that they were going to do it. And he didn't show a whole hell of a lot of flexibility. That they had guys in assignments doing things, expected, play in and play out. And that's exactly it. Do your job. And we're not going to ask you to do anything more. We don't want you to do anything more. Just do your job. Here's how we lay it out for you on paper, and we want you to execute it when you're on the field, which in theory is perfectly fine. But then plays happen and things happen and teams do other things, and you have to be able to adjust. And I believe that Jonathan Gannon was just a little bit too rigid. That his scheme, his way of doing things had to be the only way that you could stop a team on a given play. No, I like teams with flexibility. And it's funny because they like certain flexibilities. They like safeties who can also drop down and play slot coverage. So they do acknowledge flexibility is a good thing, but flexibility between being able to just cover and being a box safety who can go down and also tackle, and every once in a while maybe on a given play hide him as a potential blitzer. Oh, we don't need that flexibility. But if you can be a safety and be a slot corner too, we love that flexibility. The Eagles defense under Gannon didn't incorporate enough flexibility. And maybe, just maybe, as you said earlier, maybe Chuandashai is going to be a little different. Maybe he's going to take someone and go, listen, here's a player. Here's what we can do. Here's what we think he'll be good at. Here's where we think he can help us. And maybe we'll tailor some things to cover up what he's not great at. But we've got him on the field to do the other things. I like that. I'm buoyed by that. I think that's a good thing if that's what the Eagles are showing. You know, last week, or maybe it was a week before, I told you I think the Eagles missed out because they didn't get involved in the bidding for Chuck Clark, the safety who I like from the Ravens, who I was talking up to come to the Eagles before they ever traded for Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. When they needed a safety last offseason, I said, Baltimore's got 3 starting safeties. They don't need 3 starting safeties. Why don't you trade for a Chuck Clark? And I thought it was going to be more of a price tag than a 7th-round pick, which they got from the Jets. He was a guy who I liked, and he was traded this offseason. And you told me, oh, yeah, but they're not going to get Chuck Clark because he doesn't fit. He's a box safety. He's not the kind of safety that the Eagles want. Well, the Eagles just showed you that they are willing to maybe broaden their horizons on the type of players that they get by signing a guy like Edmunds, and they could have traded for a guy like Clark.
Well, a couple things. One, we'll go back to Gannon. I do think this is more like year one in Gannon. There are a lot of people that didn't even know Gannon was trying to play the Fangio defense in year one. A lot of people. Because he had Jannard Avery. He didn't have Hassan Reddick. So he played much more right off the bat, much more 40 fronts, much more 4-man fronts than 5-man fronts because Jannard Avery wasn't good enough. Simple as that. They also didn't have what they wanted at cornerback, obviously, with Bradbury. So a lot of people think they shifted defenses from year one to year two. They didn't. They just played it more in year two because they found players to fit it. So, I think when it's the same as offense, right? I mean, just because you want to play 11 personnel, that's pretty much the basic set in the NFL now, 11 personnel. Doesn't mean you're in 11 personnel every play. When we say that the Eagles use the Fangio philosophy, they're not in it every play. They're in it 70, 75%, the vast majority of the time. So that was always built in. I mean, Gannon wasn't in it 100% of the time. He certainly wasn't in year one. It was less than 75%. But But you know, if you're going to play something 75% of the time, you better damn well have the players to play that 75% of the time. So it indicates to me they're going back to the year one play. All right, we don't have this player, so we have to play a little bit differently. And it's not going to be as good from the plot. Now, if Sean Desai learns something in Seattle and says, you know what, I'm on board with McMullen. Too many people are playing this damn defense. We got to shift. We got to evolve. We can't play this anymore. People are figuring this out, whether it's cover 2, cover 3. Now, I think that's really positive. Do I think that's what's going on? No, probably not, to be honest. This is about, well, what we do know, the whole theme of the offseason, and Terrell's included this, but he's a better player than the 4 other guys that have signed. Well, you could argue Rashad Penny, if he's on the field, is a good player, but that's a big if. The biggest part is they need room to sign Jalen Hurts. I mean, that's the biggest part of it. So all of this kind of factors in. But it was interesting. It was an interesting signing from all those things that I mentioned. Ultimately, I think they got the best safety. You put that safety, like I said it. To me, this is one of my pet peeves. You know this by now, Jody. And I saw it again this morning. I put up on Twitter. It bothers me. It shouldn't bother me. But somebody was running down the Eagles lineup. And they put starting edge rushers, Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat. And they put starting linebackers, Nakobe Dean, Nicholas Morrow, and Hassan Reddick. Right. It drives me insane to the point I want to smack the desk like Nick Sirianni. It drives me flipping insane. It's a different position. They say defensive tackle. Well, you got Milton Williams and Jordan Davis. Yeah, they're both defensive tackles, but they play different positions. Strong safety, and what the Eagles did with C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Epps, is a different position. It might not be a bad thing. There's a lot of reasons it could be a good thing. But if they want to play the Fangio philosophy, in fact, it goes to this point, Jody. In that defense, they do not even designate. They say right safety and left safety.
Right. They don't have strong and free.
Yes. And they designate it for a reason. It doesn't exist in that defense. Now, I think it could be a great thing that they're moving away from that defense. But anyway, that's my pet peeve.
Understood about the defensive line and the strong and free. The Eagles didn't play with a strong safety this year. In the Fangio defense that they ran, they basically played with 2 free safeties. This upcoming year, you would certainly describe Terrell Edmunds as more of a strong safety. Is he going to be asked to do some free safety type things in this defense? Yeah, I do. I think so. So he's going to have to expand his game, but maybe the Eagle responsibilities will change as well, which I think is a good thing. Like I said, I think that one of Gannon's shortcomings was that he was as rigid as he was, that it was all about the system and we expect you to do this. And if you can't do this, you're not going to be able to play in our system. Well, maybe sometimes the system needs to fit around the player. We don't know. We won't know until they get out there on the field and start making plays and see where guys are positioned, what they're asked to do, as to whether there will be more flexibility to the Eagle defense coming up this year. All right, he's John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald. We got 2 good Eagle beat guests coming your way today. Joining us in a mere matter of moments is BLG, Brendan Lee Gouton from Bleeding Green Nation. Hour number 2, our pal Jeff Mosher is going to jump in and give us his insights. Tough week to get Eagle guys. We got these 2 before a bunch of guys heading out to the owners' meetings in Arizona this week. There's a couple things I want to hit on with John, and we'll certainly run by BLG when he joins us. Brendan Lee Gouton of Bleeding Green Nation next here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
My name is Fran Salerno, and I'm a managing director here at Del Valle Insurance Group. Been in the business for over 36 years, saving people money on their insurance needs. Give us a call. Let us help you custom design an insurance plan that meets both your needs and budget.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Monday get together. Birds 365. Mac. And if there's any reason to hit that like button, it better be Brandon Lee Gouton from Bleeding Green Nation joining us. Look at that happy smiling face. How can you not like that? Go ahead, hit that like button right now. BLG, how you be?
I'm doing great. How you guys doing?
Doing well, Brandon, except I can't figure out why I can figure out, as I was telling Jody in our opening segment, look, I get the contracts for Rashad Penny and Justin Evans and Nicholas Morrow and Greedy Williams. Terrell Edmunds, man, he's 26, starts for a really good defense at times for 5 years. That's the guy typically you want to pay in free agency. He's got a pretty good PFF grade. What the heck are we missing? Why is this guy not making any money?
It's actually less than he would have made, last year with the Steelers when, in theory, he had less leverage at the time because he was out there on the market until basically like right before the draft. And the Steelers were like, okay, even though we declined your 5th-year option, we'll bring you back because we couldn't find something better we liked. And based on the sense that I got from reading some things in terms of Steelers coverage, they thought he would be back this year on another kind of 1-year deal and navigate through that again. But he's not. So I think it was a little bit of a surprise that he ended up going to Philadelphia instead. I think he's a solid player. And again, you look at the age, and that's nice. He clearly hasn't stood out in a way of making plays, and you would think teams put value on that. So I guess that's the kind of the knock against him.
All right. Do you think that perchance one of the reasons why he's here in Philadelphia now is he thinks the Steelers squeezed him, had a chance to pick up the 5th-year option, passed, brought him back, but like you said, later into free agency, didn't get a great deal last year, only $2 million and change. So he said, well, if they come at me with that same $2 million, screw them. I'm going somewhere else. I know they drafted me, but they haven't really taken care of me over 5 years. So let me take the next best available offer, which may very well have been the Philadelphia Eagles. But again, back to Johnny's question, Is safety so devalued? We talk so much about running back being devalued in the National Football League. Is safety there too? Did we all overestimate how much safeties could get paid? Like a Chauncey Gardner, who we thought was going to be over 10 million and settled for 6 and change and incentives that takes it to 8. Has the NFL just gotten into a mode where safeties are safeties are safeties and we're not paying for them?
And some of the incentives in that Chauncey Gardner Johnson contract, where it's not even up to him, it's up to like team success of the pass defense ranks 16th or higher, which is, I think, just a really bad contract. Honestly, I mean, that's not even in his control to some extent. I think it's clear, other than Jesse Bates, who got paid top of the market money.
One guy, right? Exactly.
Yep, just the one guy, top of the market money. Okay, but after that, no, wasn't the safety market was not there. I think there's multiple reasons why that's true. I think part of it's just that there's still talent out there. There's a surplus of talent.
Yeah, it's pretty deep at the position overall in free agents.
John Johnson's still out there. He was he was a top of the market player a couple years ago. I know maybe he didn't quite work out with the Browns exactly how they wanted to, but he wasn't, I don't think, an awful player by any means. I think it's, a buyer's market at that position.
This will be near and dear to Jody's heart because I'm going to bring up his favorite player. And by the way, when I'm talking about Terrell Edmunds, I'm not talking about $8 million. I'm talking like $4 or $5 million. I'm saying as a 5-year starter, 26. Is there some Derek Barnett type stuff going on in Pittsburgh? Because when you're a first round pick, and he shouldn't have been, he was overdrafted according to most people. But when you're labeled a first round pick, you're a first round pick forever. And expectations are you're going to play a first round pick. You're going to play like a first round pick. And as you mentioned, BLG, he's not a splash player guy. So that's the difference between him and CJ. It's just sound, pretty much, from what I read. Consistent, but no splash plays. You think that factors into it?
Yeah, I mean, Chauncey Gardner Johnson had 6 interceptions last year, led the NFL. Terrell Edmunds
he's got 5 in 5 years.
In 75 games, started 79, played total, and then doesn't have a career forced fumble. Again, like that's not really what you want to see. I think those numbers are kind of important to look at. It might seem like oversimplifying, but for like safeties and linebackers, you want to see big plays made, and you're not really getting that so much out of him. That's not what it's all about, I think, or the only thing it has to be about. I think you can have a solid player, a guy who can come in and be a reasonable starter. Look at Marcus Epps. Marcus Epps last year did not have an interception, if I'm not mistaken. He was not necessarily a splash player as much as I would say kind of a good run defender. He didn't have an interception, and he only had 6 passes defense. He did have a forced fumble, but certainly that was not his calling card last year as much as maybe his tackling and his run defense. So I think that's kind of what the Eagles got here. They got a Marcus Epps replacement in Terrell Edmunds. It's not someone who you're expecting to make the Pro Bowl, but he can be a solid starter. I mean, to speak to your Derek Barnett point, John, I think that's absolutely right. Although the one thing that differentiates them is that Derek Barnett hasn't been able to stay healthy, and Edmunds has barely missed any time at all.
Right. They're in their actual ability to stay on the field. Kind of key to be a football player. You got to be on the field. Edmunds certainly has been better than Derek Barnett. All right. I saw this laid out this way, and it kind of jumped out at me today, so I need your reaction, BLG, and John, you too. When you look at it this way, it doesn't look as great. We're giving the Eagles credit for signing a talented player for a less expensive deal and maybe opening their thought process and horizons on how to deploy safeties this year. So we're giving the Eagles credit, but then you take a step back, take the 2000 view look. Eagles additions this year from outside the organization. Edmunds, Evans, Greedy Williams, Morrow, Rashad Penny, and Marcus Mariota.
Mm-hmm.
Put them on one side of the scale. Then here are the free agents the Eagles have lost. Hargrave, White, Edwards, CJGJ, FC,
Kaiser White.
I said Kaiser White. Okay. Miles Sanders, Andre Dillard, Gardner Minshew, Isaac Seumalo. Yeah, that doesn't quite balance the scales just yet, does it? Here's the Eagles have added. Here's what the Eagles have lost. Yeah, this side is winning. Have the Eagles done enough this offseason? Have they just gotten as I like to call them, Jags, just another guy to fill in for guys that they're missing, whereas they lost players who were more than just Jags.
I think the way they would say it is you have to look at the players they retained too. And I think that's fair, not just saying like that's their own spin, but that's part of what they would say is in the equation. They were able to keep James Bradbury. They were able to retain, work things out basically with Darius Slay. I'm not the biggest fan of the Fletcher Cox returning deal, but they would point out that as well. So Brandon Graham, Jason Kelsey. So, that's part of the equation. Part of it was that also, again, these losses were inevitable to some extent. And for as much as some people might want to say like the salary cap isn't real, I mean, this is a very, this is a lot of proof that it is real because you can't just pay everyone. And you have to kind of go cheaper at some spots in the position the Eagles are in because their roster is so good and they already have a lot of money tied up and also a lot of money tied up in, through void years and whatnot that has kind of catching up to them. The financial flexibility they've kind of counted on in the past, you're looking at 54.7 in dead money this season. So that's just kind of the reality of the situation they're in. I think they've done a decent job navigating the path that they've had. But yeah, I mean, certainly when you look at those names that you added, you're not, not getting super fired up about it.
No. You mentioned some of the names they kept, though, and certainly it's a group of very, very accomplished players, very, very good players, also very, very old players by NFL standards. BLG. Howie has said pretty consistently coming off the 2017 Super Bowl season that he learned some lessons about loyalty and about being too loyal and things like that. And then he turns around and he's pretty loyal to the guys, the foundational guys, certainly the core four guys. We live in Philadelphia. I tell Jody all the time, in many ways, I think Sam Hinkie broke Philadelphia because everybody's always thinking about the future. Well, I don't know why you're thinking about the future when you're 10 seconds away from, you're tied in the Super Bowl. The window is clearly open for this team, even with those losses. Do you have a problem with Howie sticking with all these over 30 guys?
I think when you look at on a case-by-case basis, I mean, Jason Kelsey is all-pro again. He's the best player at his position in the league. Brandon Graham's coming off a career season. You look at guys like that, why wouldn't you bring them back? Like, they're not showing signs of decline. They're looking great, and they're staying healthy. When you look at someone like Fletcher Cox, I have a tougher time with that one. Darius Slay, I thought he didn't necessarily play his best football down the stretch. So in those cases, I'm a little bit more worried because I wonder what's next. And even if it's not Slay, the fact that you signed James Bradbury, who's entering his age 30 season, and you have Darius Slay, you have two cornerbacks, 30 plus. It just seems like the likelihood of one of those players declining at a position where I think decline kind of hits sooner, or at least has the potential to, based on the traits of that position, that worries me a little bit in that sense. But I like the Bradbury deal, so I'm not really going to complain so much about him. I do think it's, again, if we talk about the things that you put in the pro column, the con column, that's one of them. But I think the situation the Eagles were in, it wasn't like they could, all right, we're going to let all of these older guys walk, and now we're going to sign, these younger guys in free agency because there's a price to be paid for that. The younger guys are getting the premium contract.
Well, you also got to pay the quarterback,
and that too.
Yeah.
So I just don't think they could necessarily afford to totally overturn the roster. I think again, you kind of have to go with case by case basis on that.
All right, specific case basis for you. They miss out on signing Bobby Wagner. Goes back to Seattle, 1-year deal, $7 million. I guess Howie's got like a $3 million cap that he can't pay anybody more than $3 million on the free agent market. You make over $3 million. No, sorry. Hang up the phone. That's the way it's played so far. But Wagner, again, had a great season for the Rams and a very forgettable season for the Rams in his 1 year there, and has decided to go back to Seattle. They saw the value in bringing him back as their stopper linebacker and their leader on defense. Eagles miss out on an opportunity to get one of the best linebackers in the NFL.
I definitely thought they should have been keeping tabs on his market. I think he ended up making more than I think they should have paid, and what they realistically would have paid.
You weren't ready to go $7 million for Bobby Wagner.
No, I mean, you almost might as well just bring back TJ Edwards. I feel like if you're willing to pay that contract, I feel like you should be willing to pay the TJ Edwards contract.
Good point. Much younger player. Yeah.
So
I'd put $5 million at Bobby. I said I'd talk about it at $5 million. Would you have talked about it at $5 million?
Yeah, again, I wouldn't say just no automatically, but also you have to consider, and kind of like with TJ going to Chicago, you have to wonder, Bobby Wagner wanting to go back to Seattle, if you kind of have to outbid that price because there's obviously an advantage in going back to where he was already.
Yeah, I mentioned ring shopping. That would have to be part of it because I thought Bobby would get more than $5 million, so it would have to be both sides of the equation.
Mm-hmm.
He'd have to be going ring shopping, willing to pay for less money. And obviously it didn't work out. Linebacker as a whole, boy, they're awfully light at linebacker as we progress. Now they're going to add a body somewhere in the draft. It's obviously not going to be in the first round. Who knows? We still got June 1st coming. Howie makes a point of saying talent acquisition season goes right up to the trade deadline, really. And they did last year. You look at Linval and Ndamukong Suh, speaking of ring shopping. So there's a long time you can add pieces. But I got to tell you, Nakobe Dean and Nicholas Morrow, boy, I mean, can we just say we don't care about stopping the run whatsoever? Is that where we are in the NFL as a whole? Like Jordan Davis, go stop the run. That's your job.
Yeah. I definitely think that they're counting on the young guys, like you just mentioned, Nakobe Dean and Jordan Davis, to really step up. That's another part of this offseason. Again, that especially they would probably say to you, it's like, well, look, we lost these guys, but we also have picks from previous draft classes that have kind of been waiting in the wings and are ready to step up. So that's definitely something they're counting on. And at linebacker specifically, it's just not a spot where they're gonna, just like running back. And I think the Rashad Penny contract, the fact that he got $600K guaranteed, kind of speaks to this. Like they're just not going to spend big resources in a position where, I mean, look, Penny's probably not going to be able to stay healthy. He hasn't ever done it in his career, but in theory, the upside of his signing is pretty good. It's pretty attractive. So, the fact that you can get a guy like that for $600K kind of speaks to why they're only going to spend so many resources on running back. And with linebacker, it's not exactly the same, but I just feel like that's the kind of position that they feel they just clearly don't need to put.
Now with linebacker, though, let me just throw this, Indy. You and I have seen this. I mean, up close, they've done this time and time again. It usually doesn't work. It's usually Eric Wilson or Corey Nelson or LJ Ford, Paul Warlow. Yeah. I mean, they developed TJ Edwards into a good player. Kaiser White worked for what they wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. You think maybe there should have been a little bit inching up? And maybe you're right. Maybe TJ just wanted to play in Chicago. But, boy, I thought he was going to get more than that. It looked like a cost-effective contract to me. Kaiser, probably not happy with 2 years, so maybe that. But they should have learned from Eric Wilson. And that's guys they signed. Don't forget the Nate Garys of the world who they tried to draft and develop. I mean, they've had far more misses at that position than hits.
Absolutely. And, I think Morrow is a reasonable signing. But you're right. I mean, they still have to do more. And Nakobe Dean, the thing about him is, I know a lot of people are excited, and I get it. But at the same time, the way I like to think about it is, for as much excitement as there is about him, I feel like a lot of people would say that they're not necessarily devastated that TJ Edwards and Kaiser White are gone.
No.
And yet those were the guys that Nakobe Dean couldn't get on the field over last year. And I think there was the opportunity for him to do that in terms of if Nakobe Dean was really lighting it up in training camp and, basically made it impossible for the coaches to keep him off the field. I think he could have been on the field at least a little bit more than he was, which is basically not at all, except for garbage time. So, it's just hard to assume he's going to step in right away and be awesome from the jump.
You know, speaking of Nakobe, we lost Jody. Hopefully he'll pop back in here quickly. But it's kind of forgotten, BLG. When he fell in the draft, you remember there was talk about an injury, as well as, you know, he's got some size deficiencies. That was probably part of it as well. But there was talk that, you know, he had the shoulder injury. It might have been degenerative. You think that was part of the reason he didn't get in the mix, especially early? And by the time, you know, the second half of the season came along, well, they were winning games. So you're not going to take TJ off the field. You're not going to take Kaiser off the field. Trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, because I'm with you. You know what's coming. And they were pretty solidly ahead in a number of games to where they could have mixed in some of these younger players a little bit more.
Yeah, my thing with it isn't that, you know, he's definitely going to be bad, as much as it's just like sometimes there's a reason why guys fall in the draft. Doesn't mean it's always a good reason, but it's not like this inexplicable thing. Like, oh, how could these teams be so dumb? Nakobe Dean is a star. The Eagles pulled one over on the entire NFL. I mean, it's possible it plays out like that, but I don't think that's necessarily definitely the case. Again, I think there could be a reason that he falls, and it's not a good reason, but it's probably a reason. And I think, like you said, the size was definitely a factor in there. The injury thing was weird because we never saw any signs of that.
Yeah.
He never missed any time in training camp or the regular. I don't think he was on the injury report the whole year. So I don't think that really was an issue. But yeah, there's a lot of pressure on him to step up. And, you know, look, I'm sure they're going to draft someone or add someone, an undrafted free agency. Either, who knows? You know, there's always a trade out there. Potentially waiting for you, especially with Howie Roseman involved. I guess the one thing I would push back on when it comes to Howie's point about, you know, the offseason is long. I agree that, you know, and last year's a great example that you can add talent at any point, but, you know, what's the likelihood that you're going to add a Pro Bowl kind of caliber safety days before the season, or you're going to get an all-pro kind of corner like James Bradbury was last year that just gets cut by someone? It's not impossible. Yeah. But you certainly can't just bank on that.
I think the assumption that it happened is going to happen again is not likely.
Right.
We always talk regression to the mean. I mean, Jody knows, like, I got killed for calling Howie a top 5 GM. I got murdered to the point where, you know, now everyone loves him. And now it's a tipping point for me because everybody's like, well, Penny's going to work out. Morrow's going to work out. And Greedy Williams is going to. And I'm like, if one of these guys works out.
Yeah.
You should be thrilled from my perspective.
As far as your point about Nakobe Dean and did everybody get it wrong and how he just kind of outsmarted everybody or did luck into it, don't care. I think the kid's going to be a star, and I do believe that the league got it wrong and how he was a little lucky enough, but smart enough as well to snag him when he did. Guys have been overlooked before in the draft and turned out. Aaron Donald should have been the number 1 pick of the draft the year he came out. He was a little undersized. Oops, a whole bunch of teams missed on him. And, the Rams were able to grab him and get one of the best defensive players of all time. So it's not like it's unprecedented in the league. All right, speaking of defensive tackle, the Eagles lost both of their starting safeties, both of their starting linebackers, starting defensive tackle. They've signed a linebacker, and they're certainly going to plug Nakobe Dean in. They've signed 2 safeties. They haven't made any additions at the defensive tackle position yet. Is that next? Is there a name or two we should be keeping an eye on? Is this a given that this is going to be something they're going to address in the draft? I know we're just talking about, John continues to emphasize, it's an entire off season. The roster building season goes to the trade deadline. Well, yeah, but someone's a little impatient and want to know, nobody's stepping in and replacing Javon Hargrave, but somebody's got to actually take those snaps and play those downs on the defensive line for the Eagles this year. When are we going to see an addition at defensive tackle? Or is it Marlon Tuipulotu? Is that it? Is the answer he's already on the roster and his name is Marlon Tuipulotu?
Marlon T, baby. People forget about him.
And then his brother's in the draft.
Yeah. Tui's supposed to be really good. Actually.
So I think that's kind of really, if you're looking at in terms of at least being like a premium kind of player, maybe not necessarily right at the jump, but potentially, you're looking at someone in the draft. Obviously, Jalen Carter, don't even know what to fully make, of him heading into the draft. There's a lot of question marks that, I don't have access to the information to, and we'll see if teams are able to get that. I really like the kid out of Pittsburgh, Kalijah
Yeah, I love it. I'm
Yeah.
buying in. I'm buying into Kalijah Cansey.
I like him a lot. I
They
feel
don't care
like
about size. Who cares?
I feel, hey, if you want a guy who can kind of do some of the things, or at least maybe potentially project to be like Javon Hargrave, I think that's kind of as close as a 1-for-1 that you're going to get in the draft.
I'm with you.
I'm
My
a
last
little
mock
excited.
draft,
him at
I
number
had
10.
number 10. I had him
If
taking
he's
him.
number 30, yeah, fine. Everybody loves him.
I got him taking him at number 10. I'm buying. I'm buying into it.
Might be a trade back for me from 10, maybe like 10. You can trade back
I
a
can
couple
buy
spots.
that.
Yeah, I think that's
spots.
maybe where you might be able to make the value work. But there's a lot of snaps to replace here at defensive tackle, because not just Hargrave, but Dominican Sue, Linval Joseph. Those guys were, especially by the end of the season, playing meaningful snaps. So you have a lot to replace there. And sure, you're going to get Mr. T back, Marlon Tuipulotu, and you still have Milton Williams and
Milton's
Jordan Davis.
Play a lot more than he did this past year.
Yes.
And I think Milton's a good player. He was playing well at the end.
I agree. But you still definitely need to add. They like to rotate their guys, and it's a new defensive coordinator. I get that, but I mean, historically, they just like to rotate their defensive tackles, so they definitely need to add more bodies there.
At Brandon Gouton, make sure you follow BLG on Twitter. Bleeding Green Nation does a tremendous job there. I need you. I'm again going to go coin Jody. I need you to do me a favor right now. What's today's date? I don't even know.
Today would be the 27th.
March 27th, BLG. Please, we already talked about running back a little bit. Please end it right now. There is no freaking way the Eagles are taking Bijan Robinson at number 10. Can we just stop it?
I mean, I don't know how this can be. I mean, just you look at the track record, and to me, above all else, the Rashad Penny signing, like I was hinting at earlier, the fact that you can get this player who you can reasonably say, I think it's not unreasonable to be like, Rashad Penny can be one of the most productive players at his position, potentially, obviously there's health factor, next season. When you can get a guy like that for the little resources as the Eagles spent, I don't understand how the same GM, the same team, is going to spend the number 10 overall pick. Number 30, it's a different conversation, but number 10, no way.
All right, so let me pose it to both of you, since you went there, both did. And I love the conversation, but just the way certain people state it, as if you could just wave a magic wand and make it happen. Not at number 10, but if you trade back to 15 or 16, then the value matches up. Oh, I get the line of logic. But then you have to have a dance partner. Somebody's got to agree to move up to number 10 and just happen to have 15 or 16 to be willing to do the deal. A lot easier said than done is the point I'm trying to make. And if anybody can do it, Howie can do it. But people sometimes think Howie can just make things happen by willing them. If that did happen, then they traded down to number 16 or 17. And the Pittsburgh DT is there and Bijan Robinson is there. Who you taking with that pick?
Cansey. You have to also look at, it's just, you draft Bijan Robinson, he's going to be here 4 or 5 years. I mean, the Eagles are not going to pay a second running back contract. They're just not. They would have done it with Miles Sanders. Not to say that, Sanders is a better, player than what maybe Bijan Robinson can be, but that's just not, it's not how they operate. It's not what they do. Whereas in theory, you draft Cansey, and look, I need to do more homework on these prospects as a whole, but I think there's more of a chance that he could be around for, let's say, 10 or more years, like Fletcher Cox has been, for example. So I think that's definitely what
I remember in the media house, BLG, talking to Howie about the 2018 draft. So after the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. So it was the Lamar Jackson year, where they traded out, understandably so. Eventually got Dallas Goedert, so it worked out well for both teams. But, well, Baltimore's got some headaches, but it turned into a very good player for them. Mm-hmm. I asked him about the 50-year option, I remember, and he basically confirmed he doesn't even want a 50-year option at running back. That's part of the reason. He don't even want that. That's a big thing at quarterback. It's a big thing at certain positions, but that's not a positive at running back. I think, as you've seen with the Giants and Saquon Barkley, the Cowboys with Ezekiel Elliott, you're kind of forced to make that decision. Even if they were both good players, but the value is just not there.
No.
It's just not there at that position in this era. It used to be the position. Back in the old days, it was all running back. But now it's unbelievable how things have changed so much.
And I think you just look at how the Eagles can get less out of more of that position, like regularly. And the fact that they have such a good ecosystem for running backs in terms of their offensive line and a quarterback who runs a lot and can help the backfield in a lot of ways. I just don't think that's, if you're looking for, there's a salary cap. Your resources are limited. There's positions you're going to have to kind of not dedicate all of them to. And I think that's one that they can kind of get away with doing less with.
All right, BLG, last one for me. And I was going to bring this up with John in the first segment, but we got off on such a Edmunds fit position and the way the Eagles judge safeties tangent that I never got there. So let me run it by you. I think one of the under the radar needs that the Eagles have this offseason as we sit here today is wide receiver. And let me explain. We know that they've got maybe the best tandem of wide receivers in the National Football League. So what the hell do we need another wide receiver? Well, you're only one sprained ankle away from having Quez Watkins back as your number 2 wide receiver. And we saw that year one of Nick Sirianni, and it wasn't good enough. Devontae Smith taking a major step up. The A.J. Brown addition was phenomenal. But both of those guys stayed healthy all last year, and that's sometimes a bit of a pipe dream. Guys get hurt. Guys miss games. Guys sprain an ankle, miss 2 games. No Zach Pascal to go out there blocking on the outside and catch the occasional pass. Why? Because no one thinks they're actually going to throw it to him. But then he does make a play, and give him credit for it. Quez Watkins coming off a down year for me. Eagles, and do you like any of that? Devin Allen, is he going to step up this year and get the track stuff put behind him and become a reliable wide receiver? Britton Covey going to jump up and become a possession receiver? Am I overstating the case here, or do the Eagles need to address wide receiver here at some point?
No, they definitely need more depth behind the top 2 guys. I mean, you just said it, like, who is it right now behind those top 2? I mean, Quez Watkins has ability in theory, but he really proved he couldn't be trusted late in the season. And where he's at currently, salary-wise, he's set to make $2.7 million this year. And none of that's guaranteed at the time. It's the proven performance escalator that bumped his rookie contract up to that number. I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, it's like the 18th highest cap hit on the team. I just don't think you can pay Quez Watkins that number. They have to either find a way to get him to take a pay cut or trade him. I just don't think you can keep him that's a high number. I don't think that makes a lot of sense, especially for a team that is tied up against the cap and should really be looking to find more ways to get somewhere they reasonably can.
Matt, you hate to think about it, but if you imagine AJ or Devontae going down with an injury, I mean, there is a chasm if you had to play somebody else. So, yeah, I do think, and they'll add a body. I do think Howie's going to trade down at some point, add picks in the middle rounds. They'll try to get somebody at that position. But you're right about Quez. Those performance escalators really kind of muck things up with players who play a lot. And, I'm not sure of that formula, but it values playing time more than effectiveness.
Yes, and we saw that with Rasul Douglas once upon a time. He actually had to take a pay cut, and then the Eagles cut him anyway. But I think there's going to have to be a conversation about that.
Where is Rasul Douglas, by the way?
Green Bay, playing well. Played well with Green Bay.
He wasn't eligible for free agency this offseason.
I do not believe so. I do not believe he signed a pretty big deal with Packers, didn't he? BLG. He's played well out there.
Yeah, he really has. I just didn't know if his deal was up. If he was, I didn't remember his name being kicked about his free agent. So apparently he's staying put with the Packers and going to have to get along with our Aaron Rodgers, or maybe not. We shall see. BLG, great stuff. Always a pleasure. Appreciate whenever you jump in. Enjoy trying to ferret the nuggets out of the owners' meetings this week. We'll be reading you on Bleeding Green Nation.
See you guys.
Thanks.
Ready Lee Gouton here with us. on Birds 365. All right, I want to further that conversation with you, Johnny Mack, when we come back. Because we know what the Eagles lost during the offseason, just football common sense tells you, all right, you lose guys, you have to replace guys. You have guys go via free agency, you got to bring free agents and or draft picks in. We're still more than a month away from the draft. They lost the wide receiver, too. I just mentioned they made no move at defensive tackle to replace Javon Hargrave. With whoever they bring in, it's going to be a massive drop-off, but you just need a body there to start the process. Even though I kind of poked a little fun at him last week, Zach Pascal did play for the Philadelphia Eagles. He got reps for the Philadelphia Eagles. He was on the field.
A lot of reps. Yeah.
Eagles.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to get those reps.
Yeah.
There they do. And I've heard no rumors, no names kicked around about free agent wide receivers. Oh, by the way, there have been some free agent wide receivers signed, whether they fit the type
Weak
of
class, though, pre-agency of wide receiver. Not the year to be looking for a wide receiver. Chicago got a good
Carolina
one.
got a guy like Adam Thielen on what I thought was a fair
but
market
he's expensive.
deal.
They paid him a ton, and he's 32. That's not the. We talked about the Eagles aren't in that market. He was way too expensive.
So what market are they in?
$2 million. I mean, that's their
less
market.
less than what Zach Pascal was supposed to make. Well, he wasn't supposed to make.
Well,
anything
he got
in
2
contract
years.
ended,
I think the Eagles assumed they were going to get Zach back, but he got 2 years, so it's understandable why he left. I mean, I think it's a bigger loss than people realize. But but Thielen would be great. But he was expensive. He was really, even at his age. I can look up the contract in the break, but he got a lot of money. So I certainly don't think they were in that type of conversation.
And I know that it's all about managing the cap, and we believe that Howie's good at it, but there is a need at the wide receiver position, and if we're just waiting for one to fall out of a tree for the veteran minimum, because that seems to be the type of contracts the Eagles are signing, I don't know that they're going to be able to scoop up that kind of guy. And here's another phrase that we use too often. That we just apply it, and then you have to deal with the reality of it. Oh, well, they draft somebody. It's not going to be the first round. It probably won't be the second round, but the third round. Oh, by the way, the Eagles don't have, as of right now, a 4th, 5th, or 6th round pick. So in that 7th round where the Eagles have 2 picks, they're going to get an extra linebacker, an extra safety, at least an extra wide receiver, a developmental quarterback, a future running back. They only have 2 7th-round picks, and it's the 7th stinking round. So we're going to fill all these needs with our draft picks. As of right now,
but you also have to be realistic. So he got $25 million. 14 million guaranteed. You can't pay that for a third wide receiver. And there he's going to be a 1 or a 2, and they have some issues, obviously. You can't pay that kind of, even if you didn't have to pay your quarterback. You can't pay that kind of money for a third receiver. So you do have to be realistic as well. And that's where you do have to hit on some draft picks. It becomes more important, not only this draft, but also, Jody, last year's draft, when we talk about the luxury picks. All right, now Jordan Davis has got to ramp up. Now Nakobe Dean's got to ramp up. Now Cam Jurgens has got to ramp up. Those guys, and even to go back 2 years, Milton Williams, you talked about replacing Javon Hargrave. Well, he's the replacement. Now, he's not going to maybe get Cansey. I'm buying the hype, and there's more avenues. But, you're probably not going to be as good on the pass rush, but maybe Milton's a better run defender. He probably will be, to be honest. So maybe you got to go about things different ways, but yeah, that's the trick to the whole thing. You have a certain amount of assets, and you gotta put the pieces together. And Howie has proven to be, again, I'll say, top 5 at what he does. So he generally puts the pieces together better than others, to say the least.
All right, I'll give you Adam Thielen. He's a 1/2, and the Eagles are looking for a 3 at best, so they were priced out of that market. I certainly agree there. How about a return of the Mac? Mac Hollins coming out of Vegas, landing with the Falcons for 2.5. Are you telling me he'd rather be a Falcon than an Eagle?
Well, I don't know. Maybe because Mac got a lot of crap when he was here. So you never know a player's thoughts. But yeah, I mean, he's a good blocker. He might be a fit. He's certainly improved. But again, maybe he took so much heat when he was here. Maybe he doesn't want to be.
All right, how about another guy? Return to the Eagles. Nelson Aguilar signed this weekend. Why couldn't he be coming back here to Philadelphia?
Nelson would rather dip himself in of acid than come back to Philadelphia.
All right, yeah, that one I kind of go with you. The heels, the wound should have healed on Mac Hollins, who was not nearly as abused as Nelson Aguilar. All right, I get that. And Nelson wasn't coming back, but at least they were here before. And my point is, the Eagles still haven't added a wide. They've lost a wide receiver. I think they need to upgrade at wide receiver 3 over Quez Watkins to begin with. And to this point, Howie hasn't found any of those answers yet. He's McMullen. I'm McDonald. You get your Mac guys. Jeff Mosher is going to join us coming up in less than 20 minutes. So stay here with us on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
as long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross. Is the best vacation one that you find or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Plan your day with confidence.
Keep the umbrellas on hand.
With Action News and AccuWeather.
Numerous tornadoes.
Your go-to team when severe weather strikes.
The water is still rising.
Keeping you prepared wherever you watch. Action News and AccuWeather, the team you trust.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
As a hardworking American, you've never experienced how tough life can be until now. A catastrophic injury while working on the job. A personal injury from someone else's negligence. Turned away by other law firms in the region who didn't bother to learn your story. It's time to meet the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm and managing partner Brian Fritz. Badly injured? Call the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm. Find out why they say, "We got this."
McDonald here with you on Birds 365. Appreciate you streaming on in. Yeah, go ahead and hit that like button. Give your boys a little love. We could use the help. Thank you for streaming in, and while you're at it, go ahead. Tell us you actually think the show's okay. Johnny Mac, this week is the owners' meetings out in Arizona. Doesn't look like there's going to be a whole heck of a lot of rule changes. implemented. The competition committee didn't come up with anything solid that they're recommending that the owners vote on. So it doesn't look like there's going to be much as far as rule changes go. And that's one of the things that happens with this meeting most years, including no tush push evaluation. They talked about it in the competition committee, and they didn't think they could have enough votes to be able to get it through. So it's going to be here, and it's going to be something the Eagles are going to rely on. I was reading Peter King this morning in his Monday morning quarterback column today, and he is harping on the idea that some quarterbacks are going to get hurt. And this NFL is deciding to be reactive rather than proactive, getting ahead of it. And they'll wait till some quarterback goes down and gets hurt, and they'll go, oh, well, we can't have that. We need to reevaluate this. Well, if Peter King is right, who's the quarterback most likely to get hurt running the tush push other than Jalen Hurts, who they do it more here in Philadelphia than basically the rest of the league combined?
I don't think it's about injury as much as getting the votes. If they know if they have the votes, and if they don't have the votes, they're not going to put it up for a vote because they, then it hurts further cases. So they'll wait until they feel it's gotten to a point to where they can get the votes. And I think it has more to do that. Now, if you have a high profile injury, I forget who got injured on a sneak. You brought it up to me.
Mahomes.
I think if that happens, it becomes easier. And that's if they want to pass it. Because I mentioned on the show last week, I had a couple people saying to me, well, they want offense. I mean, less punts, the better, blah, blah, blah. You keep the offense on the field, more points. Makes sense. So, maybe they don't want to get rid of it. I had brought up the aesthetic nature of the play because to me it's a really ugly play. Mm-hmm. But then again, so is a bubble play. Yeah, so is a bubble screen. I mean, that's one of the ugliest plays in football, unless your team hits one.
You mean that?
Oh God!
A bubble screen is compared to a tush push.
If I see another bubble screen, I say it all the time, Jody. Just tear my eyes out. I can't stand it. It's awful. It's terrible. It's so. That's another thing with the officials versus college and pros. You can block at this point. You can't block at this point. It's so inconsistent. It's so unfair. It's horrible looking. Until it hits, for years, that first season with the Eagles, everybody was saying the same thing I was. No more bubble screens. It didn't work. They never worked. They were never successful. And they're ugly, ugly plays when it doesn't work. When you get Zach Pascal out there blocking like he's an offensive lineman, you click one, all of a sudden, yeah, that's a great play. It's an ugly play. Just watch. You watch a lot of college football. That's all they do, Jody. It's ugly.
I understand. You and I disagree. I don't think it's an ugly play. I think when it doesn't work, it's an ugly play. You know what else doesn't look good? When a quarterback gets sacked. That's an ugly play for the offense. And when a guy is open behind the defense and quarterback overthrows him by 5 yards, it's an ugly play. Ugly is oftentimes defined by the success of the play. And you're right.
Beauty's in the eye of the beholder.
In Philadelphia. But I think that has more to do with the guy they're throwing the bubble screen to. Somehow bubble screens work for the San Francisco 49ers. Why is that, John?
Well, you got to have the right players. Yeah,
they got this guy named Deebo Samuel.
Yeah.
Bubble screens look real pretty with him. They're not ugly. It's not the play itself. It's the person who's out there trying to perform the play.
Even somebody as talented as Deebo, and you're right. I mean, obviously, if you have a player. Most of them still over 50% don't work. I mean, I get it. Beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but overall, I think we're both old school guys. Look, from just a pure aesthetic standpoint, I'm not talking about athletics. I'm not talking the gifted nature of the players. Just from a pure aesthetic standpoint, I think you would agree with me. 1980s football was a more beautiful game than the game played today. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you'll disagree with me.
Yeah, no, I'm not necessarily going there.
I think it's such it's such a uglier game than it once was. The intricacies of the Bill Walsh offense versus, tempo, bubble screen, zone read, RPO. It's just not as exciting. And then I always go back to, I always tell that the James Franklin game. It was Penn State, Ohio State. Trace McSorley was there. It was like a 4th and 5. They ran an RPO, and everybody's losing their minds. And I got into it with a bunch of college football people at the time, and they're like, "Well, you got to run this. You got to run." I'm like, "You can't practice RPO, zone read, and then expect them to pull Bill Walsh out of his ass at the biggest moment that they don't practice." It doesn't make any sense. And again, go watch those Bill Walsh teams and tell me that's not a prettier brand of football. That's all I'm saying. That is a prettier brand of football.
But there were 31 other teams in the NFL that weren't Bill Walsh.
Well, we're always talking about highest level. We'll talk about the highest level. All right. Chiefs and Eagles, the highest level.
Well, who runs a prettier offense, Bill Walsh or Andy Reid? We'll pick whichever is 49ers Super Bowl offense or the Kansas City Chiefs offense.
I would say Bill Walsh, because Andy has innovated to be successful in today's era of football. It's not a criticism of Andy. Andy's trying to win. Andy's trying to win games. The game has been, and by the way, it's baseball as well, basketball as well. The game has evolved into a math problem. So now it's all about, we got one more guy in the box, plus one in the running game. So take advantage of that, which makes sense. I'm not criticizing. You found an advantage. You can go all the way back to Appalachian State and Michigan, Jody. You don't have as much talent, so you try to game the system. It became a math problem. It became a math problem in baseball. It became a math problem in basketball. The aesthetics aren't there when you're trying to solve a math problem. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, you and I don't agree on this. I think that, and it goes back to an argument I've had forever about it. It's more basketball based, but the way we're discussing here in football, I see how similar it is. People love to tell you that you must decide on which of two eras is better. That the 80s basketball with the Knicks and Jerry West and Wilt Chamberlain, and the fact that they played a different brand of basketball as compared to today, where everything is threes and or athletic over the rim or whatever. Why can't you like both? Why can't you say basketball was great 40, 50 years ago? Basketball is great today. People make you choose side. No, it's got to be one or the other. Either you have to be an old school fan and this new game stinks and there's no team cohesion, or this new game is more athletic and those old men couldn't play in today's game. People feel the need that you have to choose one of the two.
Well, that's not me.
Appreciate both.
I'm not telling people to choose. They can choose for themselves. I said beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Now, I'll be the first to tell you the athletes are much better today. They're much more gifted today. But I do think the invasion of analytics. Remember, there are two different things at play here. If you're a team, if you're an organization, your job should only be to win. And if you find a way to win, you pound on that way to win. That's your job. If you're a coach, that's your job. Take advantage of the math problem. That's your job. It's the league's job. And we talked about this with whether it's the tush push or whether it's the Bill Belichick formational pushes. The league has a different job. The league, and it doesn't matter as much with the NFL. It probably matters more with Major League Baseball, to a certain degree, the NBA, certainly the NHL. Their job is to make the game enticing for the fans and the television viewers who are going to get. So their job is a little bit different. I'm sure there are people who think today's game is prettier than the 1980s, 1990s game. I'm sure there are people who think that, and they have the right, like what you like. But in my opinion, I would rather gouge my eyes out to see another bubble screen, and I got to see them 15 times a week at every game in the NFL. To me, it's no fun, but that's me. That's a personal.
I got no issues with bubble screens when they're well executed. If you got a talented wide receiver on the outside and a good run offense, bubble screen could be a great play. I got zero problems with it, unless, of course, it's being thrown at Jalen Reagor. Then shame on the Philadelphia Eagles for drawing that one up.
You're saying when it works. Yeah, when it works, it's great. But the vast majority of them are Jalen Reagor bubble screens, not Deebo Samuel bubble screens. And this is pervasive, not only in Philadelphia, everywhere in the NFL, everywhere in college football. This is pervasive. And you see 5, sometimes at the college level, you might see 10 a game because they get very redundant. The games last so long.
Here's where I will agree with you. That I think one of the things that factors into as many teams using it and calling it as often as they do over the course of a weekend in the NFL, everybody playing, how many bubble screens are run? The answer is probably too many. It's, again, driven by analytics. It's a safe pass. You're going to complete the pass. Though, well, completion percentage is that important, so let's make a play where we can upgrade the chances are it's going to be a complete pass. Yeah, but the guy gets tackled behind the line. Yeah, but it was a complete pass.
It's a math problem. That's what I said. That doesn't make
any sense.
And most people, some people love math. Some people enjoy it. They've made it their lives. Most people didn't have fun in math class. And when you turn sports into a math problem, most people aren't on board with that.
Right. But there are some people that are really good at math and they're football coaches and they figure out how to make the math work for them. Others can't do the math. Think they can do the math. Understand math is important, but at the bottom line is at the end of the day, you come
brought
up
up
with the wrong
basketball.
number. That's a bad decision.
You brought up basketball. To me, the most I was a Sixers fan growing up. I now could care less about that team. But growing up, I was a huge Sixers fan. The most exciting time in basketball for me, I can picture it. Mo Cheeks leading the break. The wings were Julius Erving and Bobby Jones. And something was coming crashing down. It was either a Doc dunk or Bobby Jones dunk. Most exciting play in basketball. Today, they got wings who veer to the three-point line. Is that exciting if it goes in? Yeah. It ain't Julius Erving rocking the baby, cradling over Michael Cooper. I'll tell you that. So I don't see how are the athletes better? There are much more Julius Ervings today than there were then.
Understood.
No question about it. But that play, that particular play, and you know the one I'm talking about, or you can go to Mark Landisberger and Magic Johnson, who speaks with such awe and reverence of that particular play. That stuff is more exciting to me. I think if people got to see it, they would find it more exciting.
Yeah, but Seth Curry is doing things that nobody's ever done before.
Steph,
and
not
the
Seth.
Doc
Seth's
did for
pretty
his. We'll see if there's another Steph Curry to come. There was another Doc. Doc was a forerunner. Doc did things that nobody had ever done. And then we found out, okay, there are other guys who can do it other than Dr. J. We'll find out if there's anyone else who can do what Seth Curry does because no one has ever done it before. He is that same kind of cutting edge run player with just his unbelievable ability to shoot. All right, we've gotten off on a basketball tangent. We're going to bring it back to football with Jeff Mosher. He's coming up next. Mr. InsideTheEagles.com and Inside the Eagles podcast. Jeff Mosher joins us here on Birds 365.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
Imagine for a moment that you went to work today and when you came home, you were catastrophically injured. Your life and your family's life. That's what happened to union construction worker Mike Little.
I was scared of what the end was going to be, but to be 100% honest with you, I knew I was going to be all right just by talking with Brian. In my heart, I just knew everything was going to be all right.
Call the firm and find out why they say, "We got this." Call 215-458-2222.
Heading down the shore. Have a ball once more.
Here, imaginations run wild and time stands still. Because here, you can find the best of the Jersey Shore, all on one 5-mile island. So leave the old you behind and get lost in the woods.
Wild, wild, wildwood days.
My name is Fran Salerno, and I'm a managing director here at Del Valle Insurance Group. Been in the business for over 36 years, saving people money on their insurance needs. Give us a call. Let us help you custom design an insurance plan that meets both your needs and budget.
They're carving them up and good play calling along the way. First and goal at the 6.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Football Monday here on Birds 365. You got John McMullen, Jody McDonald, and another M. Our buddy Jeff Mosher from InsideEagles.com. Good enough to
Inside
jump
the
in.
Birds. InsideTheBirds.com.
InsideTheBirds.com.
New backdrop, by the way, Jeff. Look at that.
Well, yeah, whoa, where'd you get that?
You like that?
That's pretty cool. That's almost as good as Ocean's behind us. And you probably can wear green. Is yours is dark? Ours is light. Yours is dark. You can wear any color you want, huh?
Yeah, you know, it's great. It's actually we have two logos, one with me and Adam, and then this one. This one, I don't use this as a backdrop much, but this is our alternative. You know, it's like the home and road uniform. We got the home and road logo.
Yeah. Gotta switch it up. Yeah, we're gonna get some uniform talk, which drives me insane. Jeffrey Lurie's gonna break out some uniform news, I would imagine, at the NFL owners meetings. But I want to start in more substantive places, Jeff, with you. Terrell Edmunds, you know, I said in the first segment of I can't figure out why this kid can't get any money. He's 26. He's started for 5 years on what's usually an above average defense, pretty solid defense. His PFF numbers are good, you know, not great. Not a splash player, but he can't make more than $2 million. I get why Rashad Penny got his contract. I get why Greedy Williams got his contract. Justin Evans, Nicholas Morrow. This kid, there's got to be something. What am I missing?
I don't know, John. I think it's a good question, other than to say that it was a really, really deep free agent market at safety. You know, we saw about 5 or 6, you know, between Marcus Epps and Donovan Wilson and Von Bell and Chauncey Gardner-Johnson and Jesse Bates, and there are probably 2 other guys who I'm not mentioning, you know, or I'm just forgetting. I mean, and sometimes we see this. There's always sometimes kind of a glitch in the free agent system at position. There's a hot name because, like, a guy like Marcus Epps was coming off. Is Marcus Epps a better safety than Terrell Edmunds? They're very similar, but Edmunds has started more. To your point, Edmunds has more experience, and he was a first-round pick, but there's something about Marcus Epps in the season he just came off of, and he's younger, that probably made him more enticing to the Raiders. I think Edmunds' issue, if you want to call it an issue, is that after 5 years, he is what he is, and he's probably shown you what his ceiling is, as opposed to maybe some of the other guys who have signed and might be younger or more versatile. Like Von Bell's a better cover guy probably. So I just think that's the story of Terrell Edmunds. Good player, not a great player, probably a little overdrafted in the first round, although I don't remember who went in the bottom of the first round. Doesn't make a whole lot of plays, steady Eddie type of thing.
Right, but a guy like DeMonte, and if I'm mispronouncing his last name, please get it right for me. KZ.
They really like him.
The Steelers safety, who, oh, by the way, they were a team that tried to incorporate 3 safeties last year with Minkah Fitzpatrick as well.
Mm-hmm.
Why does he get $3 million and Edmunds only gets 2? And Edmunds is a guy who certainly took more snaps and seemed to be as important, if not more important, to their defense. I'm with John on it. I just don't know how the Eagles got this guy. It's almost one of those, you hear the number and you go, wait, why?
Right.
Shouldn't they have had to pay more for this guy than they did? If it's just Howie being that great a negotiator, I'd love to tip my hat to Howie, but I'm not sure I understand how he pulled it off.
Yeah, the KZ thing is strange. They really like him. He's 29 years old. I know he had been with a couple of teams before the Steelers. Now he played less snaps. I believe he was injured last year. And then when he came back from an injury, they wanted to get him on the field more. So I think that's why he played fewer snaps than Evans, but they do like him a decent amount. I don't know if it's that he's just a better complement to Minkah Fitzpatrick. I know he's a little bit more of a cover guy, I think, because he's a little lighter, a little shorter. And that's what the league is looking for. They're looking for safeties who can run and cover. And he's probably a better option for them at that than Edmunds, who's more of a box kind of safety. And I would guess, and I don't know KZ really well, but one thing on Edmunds is that he's not considered like an above average athlete. So, they're always looking for people, again, run, cover, traits, things like that.
Now, Jeff, that leads me into my next point that I'm confused about. I think we all think Sean Desai is going to continue down the Vic Fangio route. And if they do that, you don't have free and strong safeties. You have left and right safeties. You have mirrored safeties. That's the whole point of the defense. We got to confuse the quarterback till post snap, and then you get that extra split second, and you blah blah blah. This guy's a traditional strong safety. So is that telling us that Sean Desai's more open-minded? Is it just, well, this is the best player we could have gotten at this point in the process, and we got to wait till we find somebody to play what we really want to play? From the fit standpoint, this didn't make a lot of sense to me, and I contacted somebody who's giving me some really good information on the Eagles defense, and he said the same thing I did. Yeah, I don't get it. Have you talked to any people? Do you get the fit aspect of this?
No, I don't really get the fit aspect, but I get the I think I get the sort of, you had 0 safeties. You need experience. You need someone to play. And right now with the experience that he has, he's clearly their most experienced and probably their only definitive starter on the depth chart. Now, if the Justin Evans kids is healthy and plays like he did before, even last year and then before missing 3 straight years, well, then maybe they found something there. And that's a guy who, you're right, John, fits the scheme a whole lot better. There have been a couple of players. I'm trying to think. Last year, there was a player that the Eagles signed who I also questioned the fit. I can't remember. And they wound up making it work. John Gannon, as you know, John, made it work up front with maybe not having all the types of players.
Would have fit Jannard Avery. Yeah.
Jannard Avery. Great point. Yeah. So sometimes you just need, and this is why, to go back to Jody, why is he only getting one year? Why is he getting so little money? Is because right now he's kind of a placeholder, a stopgap, much like the Eagles have done at linebacker for a lot of years. And if they're able to bring in somebody better through the draft, the trade market, whatever, then that guy plays. And if that person fits the scheme more, that guy plays. It is really amazing that a guy who started as many games as Edmunds, though, just didn't have a better market. It's not like safety play around the NFL is at some elite level.
Yeah. Yeah. And by the way, I'm talking like 4 million. I'm not talking
right.
Big, it's amazing to me that many starts that age. Those are the guys you're supposed durable.
Yeah.
Those are generally the guys who get paid in free agency, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, to your point, though, that the Fangio scheme is certainly spread. You know, the Eagles are one of like a billion teams running.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
They probably all looked at Terrell Edmunds the same way.
Good point. Good point. Jody, you're muted.
He sounds better that way.
Thank you for that, Johnny Mac. I forgot I coughed. I've run this by every Eagle guest we've had the last 10 days or so, and we haven't had you on since free agency kicked in. The whole Isaac Seumalo leaves, not a problem. We'll just plug our backup center in as our starting right guard next year, and everything will be okay because Jeff Stoutland says so. He just waves his magic wand, and guys transfer positions, and they're as good as the individual that they're replacing. And it's happened a bunch of times. But it's not a guaranteed every single time. Do we put it sounds like almost blasphemy to say it, but do we put too much stock in everything will be fine just because we have Jeff Stoutland on the offensive line?
Can I answer that question like 6 weeks into the season? I mean, you're right. I mean,
the Eagles are answering it now.
Yeah, well, I mean,
or do you think that first round draft pick is going to be a potential guard who can step in and play for the Eagles next year?
No, I don't think it will. I mean, I wouldn't rule it out, but I don't think it will be. But I mean, you know, to answer your question, I mean, you always, I don't think it's just Jeff Stoutland. Anytime you draft a player in the first or second round, right? Jordan Davis, I mean, you're hoping that they live up to what you saw on tape. And if you have good coaching in that position, you're expecting the marriage of what you saw. It's not like they overdrafted him in the second round. He was a second round talent, and they've got a great offensive line coach, so it should work. Now, what I suspect the Eagles will do, Jody, is look for some veteran offensive line help, because losing Dillard and, you know, releasing Opeta, although he's back, I'm on there. He'll probably be on the practice squad again. But they've had good backups, right, for the last few years, just in case a starter didn't work out or got hurt. They're not nearly as deep after losing Dillard and losing Seumalo as they used to be. So I get your point there. In case something doesn't work out at right guard, you do have Driscoll. But I do imagine that they will try to bring in some more help there on the offensive line just in case. But that guy's going to be your starter because he's year 2 and he's a second round pick, and you got to get him in there. And, you know, the best thing that happened for him last year was also the worst thing. The best thing was he got to play center when Jason Kelsey needed the elbow surgery last year in training camp. So we got a lot of great reps and showed, at least in the preseason, that it looks like he's a good player and that he can step in there. But they were trying to cross-train him at right guard at the time. And so they had to move him to center, and he really never got that right guard cross-training last offseason as they were hoping to get. So he'll get it this year, imagining, unless Jason Kelsey's going to be hurt again. And then they'll see.
Yeah. And it's more than just Camp Jurgens. So to kind of expound on that, Jeff, really a group of 5 players that the Eagles kind of baked in. They knew they were going to lose players. Howie was honest about that. And Cam's one of them. You mentioned Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, and I'd add Milton Williams as a third-year player for Javon, and Reed Blankenship as well as an undrafted free agent. Of those 5 guys, who are you most confident in? You don't worry about. Who are you least confident in? Ironically, you know, Reed Blankenship, besides Milton, Reed Blankenship is the one we saw the most of, even more than Jordan Davis.
Yeah, how about that? So wait, my 5 were Jurgens, Dean, Blankenship,
Jordan Davis, Blankenship, Milton Williams. Yeah.
Okay. Probably Jurgens. And it's really, I guess there's question marks on everybody. Nakobe Dean would be a close second, but without knowing who's that front line, that starting front line, it's hard to to know how the linebackers are going to play. I think they go hand in hand. It's a big deal. I don't know that they view Milton Williams as a starting defensive tackle. I think they like his pass. And that's a big thing too, is with Sean Desai, we're sort of still waiting to see what he likes in his personnel up front. He had a big stout team in Chicago, guys like Akeem Hicks inside, and he had some really big bullies. Ooh. And this is not a big stout defensive line. It's a fast, quick, athletic defensive line. Which there's nothing wrong with, but as we've seen in the past, that's hurt them up the middle defensively, especially against the run. Obviously they're not any bigger or more stout against the run. In fact, they're a little bit less so now. So we'll see. The linebacker they signed, Morrow, is a good player too, but he's more. Again, he's not a very big guy either. Another converted safety.
215. So, they try to put him in. Yeah.
And the Kobe Dean, when people talk to me about him, NFL people who evaluated him, he obviously fell to the third round. A lot of it was injury related, but also, the tape showed that he's a sideline to sideline guy. He's not necessarily a guy who wants to go head into the hole and take on big ball carriers and big offensive linemen coming at him. That's not his game as much. He's really smart, so he can figure it out, and he's a good player. Probably figure it out, but I remember last year someone said, don't, if one of these guys gets hurt, don't expect him to be the savior of the run defense, because if they're going to take aim at our middle, which a lot of teams did, that's not his style of game.
I fear you're right. I hope you're wrong about Milton Williams not being a starting defensive tackle, just a rotational guy. If you are right, who's going to start? Who? I don't want any part of replacing Javon Hargrave, but he's gone, and somebody has to step in there, and they're not going to be able to do what he did, but somebody's got to get those snaps and, quote unquote, as a starter.
Right.
This is not a great draft for defensive tackles, at least not at the top. None that merit going in the top 10. So we know.
I'm buying the Pitt kid. I'm all in.
I'm buying the Pitt kid. I like the Pitt kid a lot.
At 10, you think he's going to be worthy of taking him at number 10?
I just did my latest mock draft. I had Cansey going number 10 to the Eagles. I'm buying it. I'm all in.
No, I could see it. I've got great feedback on him from people who evaluate him. I mean, there's other than the size, there's not a whole lot of knocks on the kid. So, listen, the beauty of it being only March 27th is that you've got 6 months before you have to answer that question. We didn't know at this time last year who was going to be the Eagles safety next to Marcus Epps. It wound up being CJ Gardner-Johnson. We didn't know at this time this year who was going to be that corner opposite Darius Slay. At this time last year, it was Zach McPherson. Then it became James Bradbury. So, Howie is not blind to this, I'm sure. And he'll do his best to get a guy in there, Listen, the one thing is that you may not be as good as you were last year defensively, and that's okay. I mean, you can't be the same team every single year, right? And so you're going to be most likely a good, if not elite, offensive team, and you might have to just lean on that a little bit more than normal.
Yeah, I've been talking about that for a while, Jeff. Even if they got Jonathan Gannon back, even if Howie was some kind of wizard and got the salary cap increased and kept Javon Hargrave and TJ Edwards and everybody else, law of averages, they're not going to be as good.
Right.
They're not getting 70 sacks again. I can tell you that.
No.
Number 2 overall, number 1 in passing defense, probably not, even with all those players back. So that said, you feel sorry for Sean Desai because he's going to come in with those expectations. I mean, that wasn't good enough.
Yeah.
But there's a large portion of this fan base, and I get it every day because I love Gannon, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
He wasn't good enough. Well, you got to be better then.
Yeah.
Is that possible?
So Sean Desai is going to have a really awesome first 3 or 4 months as defensive coordinator for the Eagles. And when I say 3 or 4 months, I mean now. Because he's not Jonathan Gannon and he's Sean Desai and everybody loves him. And he had a great year in Chicago, even if the Bears stung. But when September and October roll along, he's probably going to get Jonathan Gannon treatment, if not worse. So yeah, he's sort of walking into a buzzsaw in that regard. But it's hard to.
God, sorry, Jeff.
I was just I don't know, other than CJ, where it still boggles my mind that the Eagles didn't want to match that. Letting a lot of these guys go and bringing the right guys back. I think I think they've done the right things as far as making the right moves. I mean, this was a good defense last year, no doubt, but it wasn't the Legion of Boom. You know, Seattle, they made sure they brought back Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas and Bobby Wagner. I think with what you saw last year, you probably maxed out on some of the guys who went out and walked in free agency, and that happens.
Is Fletcher Cox a $10 million player, or was he a $10 million player because the Eagles were losing Javon Hargrave and they couldn't afford to lose both?
Probably a little bit of both. I mean, if he's going to, I imagine he's still going to start for this team and play at least 60% of the snaps, and he's going to play it. He's still a good, what do you have? How many sacks did he have last year? Seven. I mean, go look at the number of defensive tackles who average 7 sacks in the league. I bet you they're making around $10 million or more. I know he's a little older, and there are times where he disappears a little bit, but you know, go try to live life without Fletcher Cox and Javon Hargrave.
Yeah, that's a good point. You brought up another good point a little bit earlier when we were talking about Edmunds, and you know, maybe some of the things that were limiting his value. So many teams played the damn, Fangio defense. At what point is there a tipping point, Jeff? I've been talking about this. We saw it. You just mentioned Legion of Boom, cover 3. We saw it with cover 2. Everybody's a copycat. Oh, let's play Tony Dungy's defense. Then there's that tipping point. People see it too much. It becomes too easy to deal with. I think we're at that tipping point with the Fangio defense. Even Vic said it himself when he went to Miami. He's like, too many people are playing this damn defense. I gotta shift some things up. Should the Eagles be ahead of that curve?
Well, the one thing is that the Fangio defense is different for different. Like Gannon, as you know, John, didn't run everything that Vic did. It's sort of like modified, and Sean will have his own concepts as well that he'll bring in. I mean, think the big counter thing is when you run this style of too high defense and quarters concepts, and you leave yourself vulnerable at the edges and up the middle against the run. So now you're sort of inviting this counterculture of teams that want to start running the ball again, or maybe getting bigger on the running backs, or maybe start throwing to the running backs a little more. It seems to be not as much as it was 10 years ago when you had your Brian Westbrooks of the world. You still have a couple of guys who catch. It just seems like more running backs now catch the ball on dump offs than they do on actual like Texas routes or slot routes or things like that. You know, there aren't that many McCaffreys in the league anymore. There are just guys who catch a lot of dump offs. So it wouldn't surprise me if you start to see a little uprise in that again, an uptick in that of guys catching the ball around the edges, because that's really the areas where the Fangio scheme sort of leaves unaccounted intentionally, because they kind of want you to do that nickel and dime down the field. But teams are getting really good at nickel. The Eagles were one of the best, and Kansas City was one of the best at nickel and diming the ball down the field. They used to be, you can't do that without turning the ball over. Well, a lot of teams are proving that they can do that without turning the ball over.
All right, Jeff, I need an inside the Birds crystal ball view from you for a specific Eagle position. We've seen Howie this offseason reach out for some guys who've had injury issues, as in like missed 3 seasons of his career, injury issues, which brings the cost of doing business down. But you hope that, hey, healthy, if he ever gets a chance, gets out there, he can get back to the level that he was drafted at or once was a player. Who's that wide receiver? Because we all know the Eagles have their 2 superstar wide receivers. They're both great last year, greatest pairing in the history of the Eagles. But you're one turned ankle away from Quez Watkins being your wide receiver 2 again.
Mm-hmm.
You watch Zach Passel go out the door. There's a depth issue at wide receiver right now. Is there that guy, since Howie's in that mode of getting guys inexpensively, who's been a injury issue somewhere else and is actually going to be able to pass the medicals and get on the field? And yes, look at how he found in the discount bin. Is there a wide receiver out there that can interest the Eagles at this stage?
It's funny you bring that up. That's the one position where Howie has tried in the past to find the reclamation projects, and it's only hurt. I mean, going all the way back to Steve Smith from the Giants. And so it's almost like that's the one position you don't want the injury history at. I would have jumped on Isaiah McKenzie from the Bills when they released him. Now, I don't think he has an injury history, but that's a good thing. that's a good thing. But I do think that they could use a little bit more of a traditional slot receiver. I never thought Quez Watkins was a slot. I think he's an outside receiver.
Yep.
Who you could have used outside, and they did at times, and then moved a guy like Devontae or AJ Brown into the slot, which they had done at times, but they also tried to force feed him as a slot receiver, and I just don't see it there. And by the way, Aguilar is somebody I really would have considered bringing back at a 1-year deal
Nelson's
to be a slot receiver. Just I know he's not, but that's the type of receiver I think that they're sort of missing. Someone who gives you a little bit more of a short area quickness than maybe Zach Pascal did. And I like Zach Pascal. I would have brought him back, but someone who gives you a little bit more of that receiving threat around the middle, but is purely a slot guy, and you don't have to put him outside. So that you can draft that guy, Jody. There's probably a million of them still. McKenzie is still, I think.
All right, but I'll go here again. I think I did.
McKenzie signed with somebody.
Oh, did he? I'm sorry. Okay.
I think it was Indy, but I'll
Isaiah McKenzie?
Yeah,
Colts. But let me put this caveat out there because get a lot of this guys on the stream, calls to the WIP, whatever. Oh, the Eagles will draft one. That's not a problem because there goes to draft one.
I know.
Not the first and second round, but the Eagles going to draft one. They got a 3rd-round pick, and then they got 2 7th-round picks. So that's only 3 picks after the 2nd round. They need an extra wide receiver. They could use another safety. They could use a backup cornerback. They could use offensive line depth. They need a developmental quarterback. There's only 3 picks, and 2 of them are in the 7th round. So how are they going to fill all these needs in the draft?
Well, they could possibly a trade down.
Yeah, they're going to trade. He's going to trade down.
Yeah, the only thing is, I think it might be easier for them to trade down from 30 than 10. Only because all the quarterbacks are done right at 8 or 9. Then who are you trading up to 10 for?
Yeah.
So they may have trouble finding buyers. But at 30, maybe somebody wants to move to the back end of the 1st round to get that 5th-year option on a pass rusher. Or an offensive lineman. We'll see. Or I don't think there'll be any quarterbacks at that point that someone wants.
Depends. Maybe Hooker. Yeah. But he might go. He might go earlier.
All over the map.
Yeah.
His age might be an issue more so than just the ACL.
Agreed.
But yeah, you want to get that 5th option. That your option that would help. But you're right, Jody. I don't know. There's always the trade market. Although I don't think you're really making a big deal for a slot receiver. There's always, don't forget, one of the best times to get guys is coming out of training camp, the waiver wire, and there's like a million slot receivers every year.
We still got June 1st too.
Still got June 1st. Yeah.
At Jeff Mosher NFL, make sure you follow Jeff on Twitter. Does a tremendous job with Adam Kaplan, Inside the Birds, InsideTheBirds.com. Listen to the podcast. To go down this slot, I'm going to give you outside the box thinking. Grant Calcaterra. Let's go big. Let's make Grant Calcaterra a glorified slot receiver.
Yeah. I don't know. I haven't really thought about it like that.
I mean, that's what he does. He's got natural receiving ability. He couldn't block you and me.
Yeah.
So why not take advantage of what he does well?
I mean, it sort of depends on what I guess that wouldn't be too different than a Zach Pascal, who is a bigger wide receiver. I'm sure the weight difference between Pascal and Calcaterra probably isn't all that big.
And maybe he becomes a good blocker from that perspective.
Right.
I know Minnesota's going to do that this year where they signed that kid from Baltimore who's a really good blocker.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, and they're going to use TJ Hawkinson in the slot.
Right. That's good. That's a good point. Yeah, I suppose so. And then you do have Britton Covey, by the way, who's got the traits to be a slot receiver. Now, can he actually handle it? Can he hold up? Who knows? But it will be year 2 for him. And that was where, if you were going to get him on offense, that's where he most projects, obviously.
Yeah.
All right. Anything going to happen in these owner meetings this week that's going to come out of left field and rule changes or different things? I know the whole Amazon getting Thursday night flex scheduling capabilities is going to turn into a huge story if they pass it this week. But other than that, anything we're speculating on, want to take a shot at? Yeah, this is going to happen and nobody's going to see it coming.
There's going to be a lot of executives out with their families, out having drinks. That's what I think is going to happen at the owners' meeting. There's going to be a lot of eating and drinking at the Biltmore, and then a little bit of football conversation will be mixed in between there.
Roger Goodell's new $65 million contract going to get tabled. I don't think it's going to get passed, but it will eventually.
It probably will.
Yeah, Goodell's going nowhere fast. The guy makes too much money for his owners, whether you like him or dislike him. The guy's a good businessman, so he's going to get a contract extension.
Yes,
Most great stuff. Always a pleasure when you jump aboard with us. We do like the backdrop. Feel free to use it again next time when we get you up in about 2 or 3 weeks. Thanks for jumping in with us today.
You got it, fellas. Have a great one.
Thanks, that is Jeff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com, the Inside the Birds podcast, with his buddy Adam Kaplan jumping in with us here on Birds 365. All right, coming back. We got a couple minutes yet to go. The Monday edition of Birds 365. Stay here.
Go to get your game on. Go for the beers. Go for the cheers. Go for the hit and the hits. Go for the stakes and the stakes. Go to get your parlay on. Go to get your party on. Go for the scene. Go for the screens. Go for the gallery. Go for the win. Go to Ocean. Visit theoceanac.com to plan your visit.
I get scared sometimes.
Of a lot of things.
Joining in.
Decisions.
The dark.
The dark.
But I once heard someone say,
But as I always say,
it's okay to be afraid.
As long as you face the fear.
And keep moving forward.
Wherever you are in life, count on the name trusted in insurance for over 80 years. Independence Blue Cross. Is the best vacation one that you find, or one you get lost in? One that takes you to new heights, or reminds you to go with the flow? To get your feet wet and your wheels spinning? One that lets you find your own rhythm, or get carried away? Find the best of yourself. Get lost in the woods. Plan your stay in the Wildwoods today.
Plan your day with confidence.
Keep the umbrellas on hand.
With Action News and AccuWeather.
Numerous tornadoes.
Your go-to team when severe weather strikes.
The water is still rising.
Keeping you prepared wherever you watch. Action News and AccuWeather, the team you trust.
We all know that taxes are just part of life. It's true during our working years, but also in retirement. But what you might not know is up to 85% of your Social Security benefits might be taxed. Our team at Thrive Financial has helped retire thousands of people across the Delaware Valley by asking questions they never knew they needed to ask, including how their Social Security benefits might be taxed. It's time to be proactive on taxes. Get your Thrive Retirement Tax Playbook today.
As a hardworking American, you've never experienced how tough life can be until now. A catastrophic injury while working on the job. A personal injury from someone else's negligence. Turned away by other law firms in the region who didn't bother to learn your story. It's time to meet the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm and managing partner Brian Fritz. Badly injured? Call the Fritz & Bianculli Law Firm. Find out why they say, "We got this."
McDonald here with you on Birds 365 coming down the home stretch. We'll certainly be back in 22 hours. Don't know with any new information if the Eagles will sign anybody over the next 20. I bet not. But Jeff kind of poo-pooed the owners' meetings because he's been out there. He's covered them. You've covered them before. It is kind of a entertainment excursion for the owners as well. They're very good at mixing business and pleasure.
Yeah, it's never in a bad spot.
Yeah. They don't have that one at a Holiday Inn, do they? No, they don't need to get any smarter or richer than they already are.
Yeah.
But speaking of owners getting richer, and I just threw this in there at the end with Mosher, and you and I didn't even discuss it. There's a chance that maybe not today, but over the next couple of days, The NFL is going to come out with an official announcement that the owners have ratified flexing games on Thursday nights. We already have flex on Sunday night where they get to cherry pick better games because it is primetime Sunday night, bigger than Monday night, and NBC pays a premium to be able to do that. That they're going to give the same accord to Amazon on the flex Thursday night game.
Yeah, I don't know how that works logistically. They just don't care. I mean, because think about the Eagles fans. Now, Eagles fans are certainly in the top 2 or 3 when it comes to traveling as a fan base. You gotta, you gotta book those hotels and those flights in advance, and then all of a sudden you're going to tell. Oh, by the way, the game's moving to Thursday or
right.
or
10 days ahead of time, they're going to tell you. They're not going to give you a whole hell of a lot of advance notice. 10 days ahead of time, they're going to go, oh, that Sunday game you were planning on going to now got moved up to Thursday night.
Yeah. But bottom line, they don't care. They just want to make their TV partners happy. And I always say, and I've told you this, Jody, when people ask me the most important people in sports, I never say Roger Goodell or Adam Silver or commissioners in any sports. They're very powerful, but I always say, tell me who's running NBC Sports, who's running Fox Sports, who's running Amazon's sports. Those are the most powerful people in sports. They are. They spend the most money. They're the golden goose, and what they want, they get.
But somebody's got to be on the other end going, yeah, okay, we'll take it. And you're right, 99 out of 100 times, the sporting person, the commissioner in charge, whoever's doing the negotiating says, yeah, give us the more money. Every once in a while, somebody stands up and goes, yeah, no, we can't.
That's why Roger's getting his extension, because he doesn't say no.
No, he doesn't.
Amazon says, oh, yeah, we're going to pay you billions of dollars, but can we have a Black Friday game so we can package it with our service? Oh, yeah, sure. Let's do Black Friday football. That's coming as well. They get what they want, Jody. They get what they want.
And I'm okay with it. We appreciate everybody listening. And I'll go ahead and hit that like button on the way out if you're leaving us coming up in 3 minutes when we wrap the show. I get Amazon, so it doesn't matter to me. My wife pays for Amazon Prime because we get so much stuff delivered to the house. Just the free shipping pays for itself. So
yeah, it does.
I never even made that decision on whether we should get Amazon streaming or not. It was already made for me. My wife had already done that. So I'm good with this. But here's my wine, and it's a fine wine at that. And yes, I'm a little bit of a nitpicker. The whole thing about streaming is it takes time. You got to go to the stream, and then you got to punch up the channel, and you got to wait for it to click in. When I'm working on a Thursday night and I'm on the air and I'm watching a Major League Baseball playoff game and I'm watching Thursday night football at the same time, and I got to wait that 20 seconds to get in and out of the streaming channel, it annoys the snot out of me, McMullen.
You can't toggle back and forth.
No, you can't just hit last button, hit last channel, hit last channel. Boom, and it changes like that on regular cable. But when you're doing the streaming mode, it takes some time.
Yeah. It hasn't gotten to the point. People have been predicting streaming would surpass linear TV for years and years and years. Because I used to do a lot of reporting on television sports, and they've been predicting this forever. It hasn't happened yet. It's getting closer. It's getting closer. Step. Amazon is changed the game by getting involved. People are hoping Netflix gets involved next with live sports. And at some point, it'll probably happen. But right now, the only TV ratings proof draw in all of television, forget about just sports, has been the NFL. Now, there's certain things like the tournaments going on now. The tournament is still extremely popular, but college basketball as a whole, it's just caverned out. Everything. NBA playoffs, very popular, but not regular season. Major League Baseball playoffs, regular season games, terrible. Playoffs do well. So the NFL keeps going up and up and up because it's the only thing people can count on at television.
It'll be very interesting along those lines as to see how the weekend goes for college basketball, because there are a whole bunch of people whose brackets are just stone cold dead in the water, who don't have these 4 teams in the Final Four, who tune in to root for their brackets, and their brackets are done.
Good luck. You're a genius if you had this. Yeah, you're a genius. Big week, by the way. Not only that, baseball gearing up. Also, I can't believe I haven't said this. Happy WrestleMania week for all those who observe as well.
Yeah, no, you and I will be tuned to that. And that's another streaming service that you got to deal with getting in and out of. I love Peacock. I'll be watching, but I hate the fact that it takes time to go from a real sporting event to something. All right, we've done too much whining. But we will come back and we will whine again. It will be our pleasure. John McMullen, I'm returning in 22 hours. How about you?
I'm planning on it. Let's do it.
Mac and Mac back here on Birds 365 tomorrow in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate, inside the locker room, and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.